If you're a Leafs fan, how concerned are you with the word minimum in that release?
Well, I think they're just setting up the possibility that there is a setback because you don't want to give everybody too much hope and say, okay, well, I guess don't worry, he's only going to miss 4 games in the grand scheme because of the time off. But if there is some kind of setback, if he doesn't heal as quickly, they don't want to rush him back too much, or too quickly, rather, I should say. So you want to proceed with caution when it comes to this caliber of a player, and you've got to augment your lines as you're showing here. You got to augment the lineup a little bit and kind of change things around a little. But again, it's only going to be really for like 5 games, so it's not the end of the world. In the grand scheme of things, you want to make sure he's fresh down the stretch and in the playoffs and as healthy as can be. So yeah, minimum. You're hedging your bets a little bit. You're just playing it safe. But again, this is something that's been lingering, so you want to take care of it now.
I think you make a really good point that I think on the surface people don't look at, but the 9 days off between the All-Star break and the bye week for the Maple Leafs, which leads me to the question about load management. And I'm not speculating on that. I'm sure he's injured, knee sprains are nothing to play with, and certainly you want to give that time to heal and get over. But load management, it's a prevalent thing and a prevalent conversation right now in the NBA. Like, honestly, it's a fucking joke. Like, these guys play 1 game out of 3 because they're like, oh, I can't do it. And they're like, oh, we want a lessen schedule. I don't think that's going to be the remedy for success. But load management, do you foresee a day where it's actually there in the NHL?
Well, it's a totally different situation, totally different game, right? Like you could get away with minimizing Kawhi's minutes, and then it turns out to be pretty good, and you work out and you win a championship because of it. It doesn't work like that in hockey. Load management. Maybe you miss a game here and there. Maybe you let players sit against minimal opponents, like if you're playing like Ottawa tonight or like down the stretch. I mean, not now, but Columbus or Montreal or Anaheim or whoever you end up playing that's in the bottom ranks of the standings. If you want to give those guys, your top tier guys that could use really a game off, if you want to do that later on in the season down the stretch when you've pretty much solidified your playoff positioning, go for it. But now, definitely not. I think you need to claim your position, you claim your spot. And with Buffalo chomping at the bit here, and I don't think they're going to catch up by any stretch, and I still think the Sabres are going to be a little, too little, too late scenario this year. I do like them down the road, and I think they're going to make some offseason moves that'll help them kind of stabilize their playoff presence next season. But with the Leafs specifically, I mean, it's them in Tampa. Does home ice really matter that much when you're probably going 6 or 7 anyway? Yeah, that final game, whatever. You can argue that it makes a difference or not. Nowadays, it doesn't have that big of an impact, especially when you're dealing with players of the caliber that both of these teams have. So, load management, I don't think it's that big of an issue in the National Hockey League. I think more so than anything, again, if you do get down the stretch and you could give a guy a day off against a lesser opponent or in a game where it really isn't going to be that crucial, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I just start to wonder, but again, I think hockey players in general, just a bit of a different breed than those in the NBA, where a stub toe
They
will
want
put
to
you out
play.
of action. But yeah, well,
That's
that
it.
too.
The guys want to play. They
Yeah.
want to go out there. They don't want to get banged up, but they want to play and they want to help their team. I'm not saying NBA guys don't, but they're a little bit more
Soft.
willing to
Yeah.
sit out. So
I would,
okay, that too.
yeah, I would use the word strong, but I think, willing is probably the word I would use. And they pick their spots, and damn, Kawhi Leonard started all this a couple years back. All right, let's get into the juice, the trade conversation. We are inching closer and closer to the March 3rd NHL trade deadline. I'm sure you caught Elliot Friedman's hit on the show yesterday. What'd you make of that? Anything you would like to add? Like, the St. Louis Blues will be involved in the conversation, you would think, too. What was that against Arizona?
Oh man, last night was nuts. I mean, 5-1 Chicago over Calgary. What's going on, Flames? I mean, St. Louis 5-0 is. What's that?
No, I was just going to say, any coincidence that Gary Bettman comes out, what is it, Tuesday, and says there's no tanking in the league. Look at who won the games over the last 3 days. Tell me what's up.
I'd leave it to, coincidence. Let's not get all like crazy here with the bubble wrap and the tinfoil hats and everything. But yeah, and then there was the other, what was it, Anaheim one as well. And so these teams, that should have lost didn't, all putting up 5 goals on the night. With St. Louis, it's interesting. Doug Armstrong is the kind of guy as a GM that if he doesn't believe his team has what it takes to win, not just make the playoffs, but win, he'll look to make some changes. And, Elliot, I think he touched on Ryan O'Reilly with you yesterday or the other day. That's certainly a possibility. I think with St. Louis, it's going to come down to cost and what other teams are in play here. I don't think Tampa's in play for Ryan O'Reilly, for example. I'm not sure Boston would be either. But obviously those guys would be impactful for any of these 3 teams. I think one player that Toronto has looked at and has inquired about with respect to St. Louis outside of Ryan O'Reilly is Ivan Barbashev. I think Barbashev is a player that's generating more interest around the league. Low cap hit, I think in the $2 million range. He plays the wing. He's stable. He's strong. He's got that cup pedigree already, that experience. Well-liked in the room. That's another big component for especially teams that are looking to augment their roster a little bit and make an ad here or there. It's not only a fit on the ice, it's got to be a fit off the ice too. And Barbashev's a guy that does really well in the room and gets along with his teammates and I think would be a pretty good plug for one of these contenders. But he's another guy that I would look at from Toronto's side of things. The other thing the Leafs have to evaluate and are evaluating is do we go big with one guy or do we try to fill a couple different voids here on the roster? And if that is the case, unless you're getting a bargain deal or you're working the cap because they don't have that much space to play with, you're looking at, trying to get creative and getting either the team to retain money or you're getting a third party in there, which, you got to weigh the opportunity cost in doing that and giving out an additional asset. So is it a matter of bringing in somebody on that left side for the second line, or are you stabilizing your mid 6? Which is more so the third line, more so than anything. And you can have somebody interchangeable with Yarncrook when everybody's healthy on that left side. So I think Barbashev's a guy that they're going to continue to look at and see what that price is. And it wouldn't shock me / surprise me, as I tried to combo those 2 words, if he's one of the guys that they end up zeroing in on.
To me, I think a perfect comparable is like what Colorado got last year from Arturi Lehkonen, right? Picking him up from the Montreal Canadiens. And that's why I think you see Frankie Vetrano's name linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. I just think it makes more sense to target somebody like that who could be like sort of like a Swiss Army knife than it would to be, a high-end type player. But I mean, you're always going to have those conversations, so we're going to get into it. I think things will start to percolate. My favorite word, as you know, over the next couple weeks. When it comes to Patrick Kane. Can you set the table straight? Is that the right saying? Set the table straight?
Sure. I don't know.
Let's go with it.
Set the record straight.
I don't know. Okay, okay. There's no table you set straight. Can you set the record straight? Patrick Kane, if somebody went to Chicago and said, hey, we're in Canada, would he be open to playing in Canada?
Yes. Depending on, I mean, he's not going to want to play for the Habs because they suck, and he doesn't want to play for Ottawa because they're not making it and so on. But obviously, Toronto's a different beast. I don't know if he has an appetite to go to Edmonton, to be perfectly honest with you, a team that has reached out or at least expressed interest and said, when you're ready, give us a call. But I think Toronto's a little bit different. So I think there would be consideration. I don't think it would be at the top of his list overall, and I don't think it has anything to do with the Canada-US thing. I think it's more of just what he views as the opportunity to go somewhere. Yeah, the Rangers are going to be in it if he does decide that he wants to explore it. I believe Dallas, and there's so much attention to the New York Rangers because of Panarin, and they've just been the center of this. I think Dallas has a real shot here. If Patrick Kane decides that he's willing to go to a couple different places, I think Dallas is going to be right at the top of his list. Now, they're supposed to talk, I think, before All-Star to at least start the conversation with Kane, Taves, their agent, Pat Brisson, and Kyle Davidson, the GM of the Blackhawks, and then see how the month of February kind of rolls out, and then start making decisions there if they are willing to explore opportunities. But for Kane, I mean, if it's Toronto, you got to get him on 75 cents on the dollar, or 25 cents on the dollar, excuse me. So that means Chicago's going to have to retain half, and a third party is going to have to retain half of the half, which is a quarter. So either way, I mean, you're not really going to be able to get Patrick Kane into this environment without 70, 75% of his contract being eaten up elsewhere. So that has to be the consideration. The Rangers have more space. The Stars have more space. There's more flexibility for those teams. I know Colorado, to a certain extent, they don't have space actually, but they would have to get creative. So if it comes down to Kane being moved, I really am led to believe that both Dallas and the New York Rangers will be one of the two teams that ends up with him.
Thank you for setting the table straight and not the record straight. Okay.
That's what I do. That's,
Yeah,
it's confusing, but eventually it makes sense.
I like that. Last one, then I'll let you go, and we'll touch base again next week in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, maybe tonight at the Leafs game. So if you're Kyle Dubas, Matthew Nyes, would he be part of the conversation? Like, to put you on the spot, like, what is your expectation over the next couple weeks? You think they're going to jump early and try to do something here?
I think they'd like. I mean, every team would like to get ahead of the curve, right? Like they would always. Any team would like to make a move sooner rather than later, but cap implications. That little SOB of the cap is hindering a lot of teams' abilities to do stuff now. With respect to Nyes, with respect to a first-round pick later, with respect to their depth in terms of their cupboard, I think Dubas would do it. Quite frankly, but it's not a rental scenario. Like, you're looking at a guy that's going to be here for a considerable amount of time, or at least controllable for 2-3 seasons minimum, if you're giving up young assets, top prospects, and draft picks. I don't think there's much of an appetite right now to give up that for a rental. Nice for sure. Some of their other prospects, I believe, similar boat. First round pick next year, maybe. But again, it really comes down to who's available and what other moves could become available if they want to get creative. I think Kyle is certainly open to getting creative. It's just a matter of, is there another team willing to go down that road? Would he make that move? Would he move those pieces? I think so, but I would be surprised if it's in the rental category, especially with a guy like Matthew Nyes.
Yeah, and I think it's just fair too. Like, I understand his job could be on the line, but just more so the fact that, who's had success going big game hunting at the deadline over the last X amount of years. It's just there's not a good track record of that, and I think butting around the edges could be the play here for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll see what's up with the next couple of weeks. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add something very quickly here with respect to the future, whether he's here or not down the road, he's still young. Like, he's not only considering, from Dubas's perspective, he's not only considering the future of the Leafs. He is. I don't think he's going into this as this is my last shot opportunity, regardless of what the outside noise may be. Because it's not only, it's irresponsible. You've got to think of the future, because you've got to go there with the mindset that you're going to stick around. But also, how are other organizations going to view you if you don't take that into consideration? This isn't Lou Lamoriello or on Long Island, where it's probably one of his last kicks at the can, and his contract is also expiring. This is different with Kyle, and I don't think he's neglecting the future for the now. I think he's taking it all into consideration.
Hey, maybe he wants to go to Vancouver or something. Unlikely, though.
Yeah, I don't know who wants to go to Vancouver right now, but let's let the dust settle there for a bit.
I love how Rick talking like 2 games in. He's like, "Oh fuck, what did I do, man? What did I do?" Okay, yeah. Dave.
First
I know
game
we're
looked nice. Show.
yeah, exactly. And then like, Seattle, different story. All right, Dave. Thanks so much for this, bud.
You got it, man. See ya.